Hey everyone, how you doing? You know, for as long as I've talked about pvz on my channel, I feel like I've overlooked the original game quite a bit. And I'm not just saying this because pvz's 16th anniversary is coming up. Really, I genuinely think there's a lot I could discuss about this game that I've just held out on for some reason. One of the bigger topics that I only briefly touched on in the past was the various versions of pvz1 that you might or might not know about. I made one video on it, and even in that video, I skimmed through a vast majority of the game versions featured. So we're gonna run it back today with a catch. Call it a pang of nostalgia, call it a request from Mr. PopCap himself, call it whatever you can handle. Regardless, I'm in the right mood to talk about pvz1 again. And this time around, I want to build on the work of a previous video. The way I'll be doing this is by asking a single question. One that's haunted me in my dreams like an embarrassing moment from middle school. Which version of pvz is objectively the best? It sounds so simple on paper. And in a lot of ways, it kind of is. But when you start getting into the real detective work, it's a pretty difficult case to crack. And in today's video, I'd like to pit every official version of pvz1 against one another in a death battle to see which one comes out on top as the version, or versions, of pvz1 you should play for the best experience possible. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. I think the best way to approach this topic is to explain the entries in a list, going from the weakest ports to the strongest. And before anything else, let me clarify two things. One, this is all just my opinion, don't view it as the gospel. And two, I'm not gonna hold the price of a version too much against itself. Mostly. So with that being said, what would be the objective worst port of the game? Well, I suppose we'd start with pvz World Winner. This was a competitive version of pvz1. Yes, you heard that right, it was made for a gambling website at the time, so there was actual money involved in playing it. This probably would have been a big hit if it was released today, though with only one level playable and 7 total plants. Yeah, I don't know. Is the gambling really worth playing an objectively worse version of pvz? I didn't think so, moving on. Next up, we have a version of the game that I'm sure quite a few of you might actually remember playing, the web version of pvz. This was a particularly interesting version of pvz1 that let you play like 12 to 14 levels or so, and it had unique versions of Endless and Vasebreaker that were infinite and had unique limitations, such as Endless letting you only pick 4 plants and such. As cool as it sounds, there's really not much more to discuss with this particular version of the game, unless you want me to dedicate 3 minutes of the video to explaining Giga Football Zombie, which I don't feel is necessary, sorry dude. Because you can't even beat Zomboss in this game, I don't see a point in discussing it further, so what's next? Okay, take that last version and make it longer. Oh, and remove the Endless and Vasebreaker. Okay, that's pvz free trial, now we're getting somewhere. This is another demo of pvz1, one which actually predates the web version of the game. So why exactly do I consider it better than the web version, despite that game technically having more content to offer? And no time limit, because yes, this one has an hour-long time limit? Well, you can reach up to 3-4 in this version, and you actually have some level of autonomy over your save, being able to buy seat slots and a couple of extra plants. Basically, you can go further in the game, so in my opinion, I think that's overall a better deal. But honestly, these two are interchangeable, placement-wise. Moving right along, we have the first version of pvz1 in this video that you can actually beat, and it's the Java version. To this day, people still debate over this game and its authenticity, which is valid, but like, I think PopCap would make a version like this during the era of gaming that pvz thrived in. So yeah, in my book, it counts, and therefore makes for an interesting discussion. Although not really, because this version of the game has just the adventure mode, and that's it. Also, several plants are removed from the game entirely, as well as several zombies, every adventure minigame, and it's just like, the longer I talk about it, the worse this version looks. The sheer amount of missing and changed content is like an endless list, but you can beat it. And you know what? That's what really matters in the end, let's keep going. Next up is possibly my favorite version of pvz1 when it comes to its absurdity, that being pvz DSi edition. I can't even begin to explain how goofy this one is. Okay, actually, do you know how DSiWare games worked? Essentially, these were bite-sized games that spawned from the Nintendo DSi shop, a service that predates its much more successful 3DS eShop younger brother. What made this shop unique was the way it handled selling games, because the DSi itself was just a slightly upgraded DS. There really wasn't a whole lot else to it, and the games on this old shop had to be condensed super heavily in order to actually fit on the system. So with that being said, this version of pvz1 can be completed. Awesome, right? It also has some unique DS features, such as the minigame Heatwave replacing the 3-5 level, among other basic layout changes and graphical differences. However, due to the file size of DSiWare games being so small, almost every bit of extra content was cut. We're talking the Zen Garden, Versus mode, Puzzle mode, Survival mode, basically everything except the core game and the minigames. One of the minigames also replaces Zombie Nimble Zombie Quick with a unique game exclusive to this version called Zombie Trap. And that's it. Words can't explain how silly this version of the game is. It's so goofy. Now, when it was available, it was only $8 US, but still, why even make a version of the game that's missing so much content? Sometimes we gotta wonder what PopCap was really thinking, because even the music video at the end of the game is missing from this version. That's just sad. But it's playable, and that's what matters, so let's move on. From this point forward, most of these versions of pvz1 are actually pretty well made, and therefore we'll only go over what these games are missing or changed, as opposed to the entire game in general. So next up is a version of the game that isn't really all that well known. In fact, even finding information on it for this video was pretty difficult because it's PVZ Nook/Kindle edition. Yeah, the reading tablets. You know the ones, right? Apparently, PVZ was playable on them, or might even still be, but I don't own a reading tablet. Yet. I'm getting one eventually, but it sure as hell not for PVZ. Anyways, from what I can gather on the actual store page for this version of the game, it's mostly updated to being modern pvz1 on mobile. It's just on reading tablets. Not ideal per se, especially since you've got access to what is basically the equivalent of the Library of Alexandria in your hands, but it's okay. Though unfortunately, because it's for reading tablets, it doesn't work on all of them, and some reviewers purchased the game not knowing that. Yikes. Can't really say much more on this one, so let's go ahead and move on. Up next, we have the Android TV edition of pvz1. Have you ever heard of this game? Well, it was a Chinese exclusive port of pvz1 made for, brace yourself, Android TVs. Chinese Android TVs. Joking aside, there's an actual story with this particular version that I love to tell every time I talk about this game in my videos, because it single-handedly makes this one of the funniest versions of pvz1. Okay, so picture this. You're a PopCap Shanghai employee, and your goal with this port of the game is to make it difficult, because there's power-ups that can be purchased at any point to help clear out the levels. Cool, right? This might not be the exact truth, but it's the core philosophy behind this version of the game. The difficulty on the Android TV ports can't even begin to get explained properly. I mean, the pool levels start throwing gargantuars at you. That's ridiculous. And yet, somebody must have overlooked something. Something big. Because every level after 3-9 is absurdly easy. We're talking like every level is missing Flag Zombie now? Why? I vividly remember hearing about this and finding out just how massive this blunder is. You want to know the funniest part? Every level in the files has a hard version. Apparently they're just not enabled properly beyond the pool levels. And besides that, the entire game is basically the same as the other console versions, except it's missing versus and co-op due to bugs. But that's it. This version is ranked a lot lower than those ports for the sole reason of it being a Kaizo mod before Kaizo PVZ mods existed, and it's not even a finished one at that. Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder. Moving right along, next up we have a very iconic version of pvz1, that being the OG game. Yes, we're talking about the release from 2009, the one that's currently unlisted because the Game of the Year edition is objectively better in basically every way. Even if that's the case, I think the original edition is still very solid, even if it lacks contents from the Game of the Year edition. There's really not much else to say for this one, except for the classic old Disco Zombie variants being from it, which is neat, but not important, so let's move on. Next up is an iconic version of the game, honestly, and it's the one that a lot of people grew up with because it sold like hotcakes. That would be PVZ DS Edition, and the DSi version really feels like more of a demo to this port than anything else. Take everything that was in the DSi version, then add all the minigames, puzzles, and extra content you remember from PvZ1. It also adds and changes a few minigames, as well as introducing Versus Mode to Nintendo fans, which was honestly a great move on PopCap's end. So yeah, it's a very nostalgic port for me, and you can probably see how, since I have a very legal copy on my very unmodded 3DS. Had to make sure that was clear, sorry. Oh, but just because this version is nostalgic to me doesn't mean I don't see its flaws. Primarily, well, look at it. The game chugs when there's a lot going on. Frankly, I would rather play other versions of the game, such as... Okay, I've made fun of these versions a lot in the past, but honestly, they're not that bad. It's the mobile versions of pvZ1, all of which bundled up into one section because, frankly, the differences between them are very minimal and unimportant. Basically, these are the free versions of pvZ1, which immediately makes them better than several games on the list, despite having ads and removing lawnmowers randomly from the lawn. Even still, these are overall very solid versions of the game, ones that now almost have every feature from the Game of the Year edition of pvZ1. The one thing I feel like these versions are missing is Versus, but honestly for being free, they're pretty okay. There were also paid versions of the game on mobile devices, but these were discontinued, and really, I don't see the reason to differentiate them from the free versions when they were lacking content that the now modern ports have. This is the only situation where I made an exception for any unavailable ports, so paid fans, you're safe for now. Still in the same spot, but what would I consider better at this point? Well, let's set the stage. The year is 2015, and there's a restaurant in the United States that's doing very well for itself, Red Robin. This restaurant proclaims itself as a family-friendly American burger joint, and the assessment is fairly accurate. When you look at their menu, there's a plentiful amount of options for everyone, with even the pickiest of eaters being able to enjoy a meal here. And seeing as how their revenue was slowly increasing by the quarter, the CEO of Red Robin, Steve Carley, announced that the restaurant chain would begin adding Ziosk tablets to every location over the course of the year to improve both customer service and overall quality of life among diners at the establishment. For those who may not know, Ziosk tablets are these electronic devices that sit at tables in some restaurants even beyond Red Robin, and you primarily use these to pay for a meal if your waiter or waitress is too busy to take your check, or if you're just too shy to pay. Regardless of the reason, it's basically just a convenient way to move on from your meal in peace. But these tablets can serve another purpose. See, they aren't just a digital way to pay for your underseasoned fries. No, you can also pay $1.99 to play games on a device. There's a very specific selection of games to choose from, with one of these being Plants vs. Zombies for the Ziosk. And believe it or not, but this particular version of the game is apparently identical to the Android version of pvZ1. It just lacks microtransactions and most of the modern features. Okay, so it's not actually better than the mobile ports, but I wanted to put it above them because it's funny. Even still, let's move on. Oh, here's a fun version of the game to talk about, pvZ Social Edition. Man, when I tell you this game is a fever dream, you better believe it. I've talked about this game quite a bit in the past, and despite that, I still don't really understand it all that much. It's such a weird little title because it's definitely pvZ1 in its heart, but it's made in Flash. It has a custom versus mode that's basically a predecessor to pvZ2's Arena mode, and it has extra plants that, for the most part, never return to the series again. One of the only things we know for certain about this game is this specific Chomper commercial coming from it. So it's one of those Chinese titles, huh? I don't think I need to tell you that this version of pvZ is weird, and a little scuffed, and maybe even a little bit goofy. It's not even available to play anymore, and it hasn't been for over a decade. But even still, it's not that bad. To be completely frank, it looks like it was a solid game when it was out, even if it looked extremely silly. From what little we can see nowadays, the PvP experience actually had a lot of depth to it, and there was this entire map system where it looks like you could customize a town? Like, that's so much effort, and for that reason alone, I'm ranking this version over most that we've covered so far. Though as neat as it might have been, it could never beat the pvZ Great Wall / Journey to the West editions. Can I be honest? I wasn't aware that the Journey to the West edition was actually an updated version of the Great Wall edition. That's a little embarrassing on my end, unless I'm mistaken, and it's actually two separate games that happen to have almost the exact same content. In any case, these versions of the game depict PvZ in a Great Wall style. So plant pots are fine china, the lawns look like they are literally on the Great Wall of China, and so on and so forth. Interestingly enough, the iOS and Android versions of Great Wall Edition differ a lot, seeing as how the Android version got renamed to PvZ Journey to the West Edition, and iOS didn't, I guess. I'll be honest, every time I look at these games, there's always more information available for them, and it always confuses me, so please take what I say about them with a grain of salt. Now, what doesn't confuse me is how much extra content the games have. On top of the base adventure, these titles have an entire new adventure to go through that roughly follows the events of the classic Chinese novel, Journey to the West. There's also several new endless modes to play, along with a boss rush mode because, yes, these games added new bosses, and yes, they're pretty deadly. And this doesn't even get me started on the shop system for the games, which let you cheese levels with diamonds, which were apparently a separate currency in these games. Regardless, there's a lot to these titles, but they also have a lot of issues, like Grasswalk being the only music track to play on the Android versions, among other issues because it's in Chinese. I don't understand what I'm doing. These versions are pretty okay, but like more of a novelty than anything else. I think it's more interesting than the 2009 version of pvZ1 regardless, so let's continue. Speaking of that though, next up we have the classic, pvZ Game of the Year Edition. I'm not gonna lie, if I'm gonna play this game on PC at all, this is gonna be the game I play. I don't care if Social Edition has Talisman Zombie and Future Star, or if Journey to the West Edition has a new campaign. The Game of the Year Edition can actually be played nowadays and in English. And I think that matters more. Even in the case of hypotheticals, the janky charm of the Chinese games isn't enough to cover for themselves. Game of the Year Edition is just better. It just is. Most fans know this version of the game by heart anyways, so besides it being locked to the 3x4 aspect ratio, I keep hitting my mic, I'm sorry, there's really nothing wrong with this game. It's the ideal way to play pvZ on your PC nowadays, at least officially. We'll get to that line of thought later. Okay, how about we discuss more Chinese pvZ? This time around, it's Endless Edition, one that I'm sure a lot of you actually might know about. This is pvZ1, with almost all of the content from Great Wall and Journey to the West, including the entire Journey to the West campaign, and there's a new world here. Now granted, we're missing puzzle games, survival mode, and a little bit of extra content found in most international ports, but to counter that point, plant heroes. Before pvZ heroes. Oh, I believe these are all based off of Journey to the West as well, but it's kind of crazy regardless. They also added some pvZ2 plants into this game, and they are so cursed. I don't care about what y'all say about Snapdragon's design, I still think it's horrific. The others have grown on me though, I like Ghost Peppers a lot more than I did in the past. My own opinions aside, the sheer amount of content in this version of the game, and especially with it being as polished as it is, genuinely makes this a solid experience if you ever want to dive into the absurdity of the Chinese pvZ world. Just be ready to use a translator at any given point, and to hear Grasswalk playing constantly because yes, this game is also affected by that. Lovely. And somehow, we're not done with the Chinese content. Before we get to the real heavy hitters, we absolutely need to discuss pvZ Original Edition. What could possibly set this game apart from its predecessors? Well, it combines all of the Chinese pvZ games into one modern package, and adds even more content on top of that. Like pvZ hybrid plants, what? This version of the game is fascinating. And the history behind it is even more interesting because there was a huge legal battle happening in the background, all while this game got updates almost every day for the 1 year it was active. This was official, it was real, and it got so much content that I would have to make a separate video going into great detail over what was added. With that being said, the legal battle really couldn't be understated. As it appears, an anonymous copyright claimer wanted the game to get a complete makeover, so as to not resemble the original pvZ in any way, shape, or form. I know Chinese copyright laws are pretty loose, but clearly whatever power this claimer had was massive, because the mini program developers actually listened, and the game as we know it now is gone. If this game was still around, it would easily be at the top of my personal list, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. But that's not such a bad thing, because at this point, we really don't have much else to cover. In fact, it's come down to a top two. I honestly believe these versions are interchangeable. It's really hard to put one over the other for various reasons. So with that being said, what's the first entry in this section? Well, it's gotta be the console ports of pvz. All of them. The Xbox 360, PS3, and PS Vita all have their own charm, but they're basically the same games, except the Vita kinda has a few differences, but like, it's still good, okay? It's missing verses, but it's good. Hey look, Zombitar. Ooh. As for the real stars of the show here, the Xbox and PlayStation versions of the game have all the content of the Game of the Year edition of pvz1, and they build on top of that by having widescreen support, a new minigame or two to replace ones on PC that would be tough on controller, and versus mode, as well as co-op, but versus. I glanced over this in my DS Sport discussion, but this game mode is genuinely one of the most enjoyable things to come out of pvz1, and if you've never tried it before, you have to. It's so good. This is probably most people's favorite entry for that reason alone, not to mention the widescreen support. It's just such a convenient way to play PvZ, and it's great for that reason. But we have more to talk about. This last one isn't official or a specific version, but it needs to be discussed in a video like this, and it would be a massive disservice to the community if I didn't. And the final version in this video is PvZ DLC Edition. The idea is quite simple. Imagine if PvZ1 got DLC. Suddenly, the gates are wide open for new content, and there's a lot that this version adds to the core experience. From what I know of the mod, it currently has 2 new worlds at the very least, with several plants returning from future installments, such as Lightning Reed now sitting comfortably in this game. On top of this, it has new zombies as well, and versus what? So basically, this is a PvZ1 mod that builds on what Game of the Year Edition did, and it does so in a very cool way. I'm a massive fan. I don't really want to spoil too much else about this mod. I think you should genuinely check it out for yourself. You should also keep your eyes out for some other up-and-coming PvZ mods. There's genuinely some cool ones that might be really neat to check out in the future. When PopCap don't, the fans do. It's like the 10 don'ts, but whatever. I think that's basically every version of PvZ1 covered now. And wow, that's a lot of PvZ. A lot. I think it's fitting to end this video on a review of where every game fell on the ultimate ranking here. So, at the bottom of our list was World Winner Edition. And going up from that, we have Web Edition, Free Trial Edition, Java/J2ME Edition, DSi Edition, Kiosk Edition, because yes, if we're being objective, it falls pretty low for being what is basically a demo, unless you want to sit at a restaurant overnight. Anyways, Nook/Kindle Edition, Android TV Edition, 2009 PvZ, DS Edition, all mobile versions of the game, Social Edition, Great Wall/Journey to the West Editions, Game of the Year Edition, Endless Edition, Original Edition, and as for the interchangeable versions, all the console ports and PvZ DLC Edition are sitting at the very top. Now, this is just my take on where all these versions fall. What do you think about my list? Do you think there's another version better than my top picks? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section down below. And finally, I gotta read out all the extra YSI members, and believe me, there's a lot of them, so we're gonna speed by this process pretty fast. Let's go! Thank you to Song, Dan B, Wapfa aka Johnny Homeowner, Nicholas Vankowski, Glitch in the Code 867, Erikiro, Envious, Mop, Sploob, Sleepy, Any Lives Alone, GNVS, Game Within, Retarobi XDD, Mr. K, Tails Gimmer, Carson NC, Sad Monkey, Young Cato, Francisco Moro, Superior Nos, Emerald, Ethan the Werewolf, The Silas's, Aspa, Jolty, Kathy the Nerdy Internet Brits Trove, For You, Ghost Roast, S. Zillard, A. Padwa Result, I think, Dexter the Cat, Clock, You Should Buy a Mori on Steam, Josho, Void Nater, Skylar Gray, Abigail Grace, Chef Kawasaki, Lucas Stomping Koopas, Exotic, Some Guy 3466, Minion, Galaxy Plays, Funny Toad Man, Max Gaming, The Snapdragon, Click Tuck, Basilius, I'm a Dumbass, ASAB117, That One Useless Guy, Brad99TM, Y666, Cookie Tyga, Lena, Willow XD, Lucky Blocks FO, Adventurer Kana, Pite Egan, Snarky Goblin, Guest 4982, Penguin Emperor, The Bird in Your House, That Gamer Dude 81, Vixiv ASMR, Deviant Huggo, Tuculio, Ramirez, Uchu, Organic Comfort Market, Miro, Fisker Plays, Tai Sezi, Dumalso Gaming, Bite Sized, The Name's Kai, Jasper, Jim Jam, Rayu, Jack, Alma 3, Nah, I'm not reading this one, sorry, Foxes, Riku, Captain Party Flare, Love Me Mira, Sergeant Goobert, Some Weird Person, Streets, Volk VR, MO, Electric Boogaloo, Crazine, Jan M, Goldtube, Ketchup Drinker, Cute Benji, Smash Kid 15, Tyler Coney, Ducky, Sack, The Second Strange Child, Pranjal, Emmanuel De Los Reyes, Lindsay Carlson, Jonathan Nato, Emal, Makarov 2918, Skunk, Circle, Stupid, Sarvi Luna, Soviet Union, DS Dima, MM Master XD, Ichiro, Gummy, Codename Myth, Carter Keeps Quiet, Rat Flowers, This Game Blows, Vexy, Lipe, Frostadachi, SD Gundam Club Build a Boat, Aiden Brandon, Bread, Tendies, Diane Akasio, Poop Lord, Selfie, Ketterful, Nimrod Hun, Happini, Sir Alex, Dark, Sal 20 Sea Racer, Ani 32, Chloe the Dasher, Mike the Awesome, PNG Golf Ball, Referee Cat, American Cat, Javier 07, Tree Master, Hapos, Lava, Top Drop 0, Ka Sunny, All Star Zombie 7, Boss Breeden, Snabs, Onilink, Fierce Deity, Rain God, Ricky Ghostal, Nebby, High Quality Dummy, Modest Cinderace, Vitor Camargo, The Eepster, V-Wemmy, Meeks, Super Mario Tyler Clash of Clans, Crazy Life, No, High Laser MK, Amstars, Shaquille O'Neal, Thomas Jacobson, Casino Koala, Dambot21, Ria the Dragon, Cecil Ree, Oman the Country, Z Sigmund, Domotor, YT Cobb the Goat, Pretty Pink, Epoxy, Viloka, Violet, Iron Guy, Username Milius, SimQ, Do You Like Waffles, Alexander Villavicencio Perez, I'm so sorry, Spins, Uncle Iro, Rainway VA, Rudy the Shiny Hunter, Jolty, Dimension 235, Sikabear, Nobushi, Nico, Surge, Kaito Guy, Hero 1749, Ball Stealer, Pod Pringle 115, Bruno, Mathis Bochard, Order Disorder, Pokemon is Cool, That Kid Cisco, The Attractors Alt Accounts, Mario Brine, Ari Elberian, Bowser Jr. Fan, Ace, Jalara 1981, Frey, Mr. McHammers, The Main Mon, Doomies Toomies, Goatflower, El Coronel, Dead Ted Quiz, I'm so sorry, that's so white, MX Curve 28, Torosaurus, Disaster Fire, Drone Sans Cousin, Meep, Pleasant Lemon, Lamin Yamal, Aki Guy, Zycart 65, Otaz, JVC, Johnny Elbozo, Kai Kai, Tudden Sink, Bygane, X Raynon, Isaac Vibing, Milksy, Isaac, Kinetic TV, Pichuter Le Artiste, MF Memes, Jinxie Jinx, Cosmic Skies, Lonitus, Stewie Sprung, Skippy, Lindis, Indis or Lindis, L Franklin XD, Spimmer, Rainforest, Limby, The Random Mint, Juan Bolaño, Sicky Toothbrush Hair, Charizard King, Arimo Z, The Cork Dealer, Grim, Lunapie, Kingsley, Miner 49R, Athos, Spade XD, Just a Normal Guy, Spooky, Cwem, Rogex, Rowan Glens, Archer, Bamboo I Guess, Silverly, Aradhia, Brilliant Putra Satria, I'm so sorry, Cannon Zero, Robogen, Wizcat, Coquila 3, Cybers, Cinder Silver, Cinnamon Gaming and Stuff, Jescore, Greasy, Jervis Jerb, Titanium Clips, The Fat Cat, Chance for Forsaken, Cheese, Makar, Tapis, Nintendo Switch, Super Short, Jose R, Mr. McTurtle, Zanzanius, Madeline from Celeste, Homeboy, Cat Q, Ode Sinkus, My Princess, Frizz 8000, Coffee, Bug Livestreams, Walkability, Gator, Fish Twix, Hello Dad, Blake, Derby the Doctor, Why Not, Prides, Tem, Blake Trindle, Fridge Dust, Sky, Admiral Blake, Maya Faye, Mark Zab, 6303, Stop Goat, The Nitro Melon, Landro Arte, Cloud Protogen, Justice Silly, Ellymon, ABD Man, A Life You, Dr. Flowey, Ridiculous Games, Arson Pup Live, Luna, Junior Tolliver, People Who Roll, The Larry, Air Sprite, Gabe Gaster, MJR, Bing Bong, Art Knight, Zellerix, Cinnamon Toast, Waspinator, 421, Fabcat, 4I2IRD, Julian Calero, Just Kexier, Kingpin, Gozcob, Ideal Ruiz, The Smiler, Icy Lynn, Gemstone Zaza Factory, Matthew Gomez, Mr. Red, Joe Clark, Chaotic One, Gulpman, Decay, Eric L, Mun, I think, Rust, Sunduck, Winnison 000, Glowcester Cooks, Dredge and Storm, Twisted Ruckus, Chump Cakes, Capik Gamer, Kelsser, Cheddar Cheese, Alizin, Bob, Master Nathan, The Malevolent Mayo Goji, Infinitas Contas, Femwara Ramos, Luca, Sharkadilla, Wishy Washy, Leon McGorlick, The Fetus Cartooner 57, Dank, Snowy Neko, Varen Melonius, Amaranth the Pet, I'm so sorry, Chicken Boy 07, Mr. Egregious, Always Combed Waria, Solar Oatmeal, Superhero 772, Ian's Productions, with the Moai, Moo Milkman, love that profile picture, Yo Boy D-Man, Apathy is the Worst Sin, Evan Lucia, Alan Pika, Slayerman 9000, Pyro with ADHD, CB, Calmoco, Gabriel 2 GG2 Ninja, Persona, Dylan Bear, Ilon, The Mute Streamer, JAE something, Louis Santiago, Racing Hard, Man-Based Individual, Turtle, Sketchy Dude, Mortified, Dr. Zomboss, Shop Neil 4, Murph the Gangster, Jimmy Olsen, Nova Strala, Mean Police, Nerd FN, Nabbit Productions, Neon Stick, Sway Plays, Kitty, Dylan Lewis, Spooter, Doro, Z-Stuffs, Astrolab, Golden Gets Still Blue, Sigmink, North, Freak GD, Melissa Leo, Duck Lover, Shy Fox Suwu, Juge Plays, Lucci, How Do You Dab, Chance Pluto, Extreme Ducks, Saturi, Agent AK01, Renangus 05, Taps, Just a Dumb Mug, Electric Rush 223, Dr. P Shooter, Matthew Pitts, Lagan, Toby Stebbins, Noob Idiot, UD Golden, Applemoln, Panda the Best, Zach DeRoss, Noah, Boogie Fan 101, Viola the Rosa, Banjo Man, Philip, Pat Rat Good, Shy Guy 64, Poltergast, Reno Crocs, 12x73, Chill Dude, I don't know what language that's in, Remix Revolution, B-Man 424, Ramen Hair, and finally, I'm a Bad Gamer. Good God. Okay, we're done. Thank you to every single one of those members, and alongside them, my normal YSI members. Y'all rock. That's too many members though. This alone took me an entire day to edit. I don't want to talk about it. But anyways, I'll leave you guys off with one final thing. Happy late birthday, PVZ. This video is coming out fashionably late, but still, happy birthday. With that, I'm gonna go. My throat hurts. Peace.